Well, folks, I have some bad news. It looks like the only issue was not that it was engaging on these hubs, but if you look at this, I just realized when turning this is that I've got a broken axle. Good morning, this is Ray with Easy Simple Mechanic. And today we're going to continue on the next project, which was to go ahead and do some more work on the Raptor to wrap it up. So just a recap, the last project was this trailer that we got from Copart. And you know, as you can see, we got it all done. We got it registered and all. It was a little bit of a challenge, just to let you guys know. When you buy some of this stuff at Copart, especially if it's an insurance deal and they create a title for it at Copart, sometimes they don't put the weights on these things. So one of the things I learned from that is that if you go get it registered, they may require you to go get the trailer weighed. So you'll have to empty everything out. I had to remove shelves and everything that were already made in there. I had to remove those and get an empty weight on the trailer to go have it weighed. The other issue I had was that the VIN number was faded on the sticker. I don't know if you guys can see this sticker here, but you can see this is all kind of faded out and gone, and they couldn't really see the VIN number. So the guy at the inspection station did not want to pass it because he couldn't find the VIN. So just as a trick, guys, I did look carefully and found the VIN, but what I did is, just so I wouldn't have any issues, is I went over to Harbor Freight and I found one of those little metal stamping kits, and I went ahead and I stamped right in here. I stamped the VIN number right on the frame. So by doing that, when I took it back to the inspection, the guy was good with that, because at least it had it stamped on there. So just FYI, that's something that happens if you can't get this stuff inspected. And here's the plates. So now we're ready to go. We'll get this Raptor going, but for now, let's get busy and get these hubs changed out. So let's get to work. Okay, so I'm going to bring you closer into the action here. What I'm going to do before I start anything is I'm going to try and get the bolt loose that holds the shock, because that's a really tight bolt, and I want to make sure I can get it loose before I get stuff in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get the bolt loose on that shock, and then the plan is to get the tie rod end off and the upper control arm off, loose there, and then also remove this cap and remove the nut that holds the axle in place, so that we can get to remove that axle to get to that hub. So we'll be doing that. I'm going to try and keep you close to the action. Things to keep in mind is to make sure that you lubricate these, clean them up and lubricate them before you take them off, so that they don't spin with the joint itself. So you want to make sure of that. The other thing you want to be sure of is that if you use a impact or whatever, once you get that nut going, coming off on that bolt, it has a lot of blue Loctite on it. So once you get it moving, you need to keep it moving in order to make sure that it comes off, because it could get hot and then it'll seize up on you. So you'll be seeing me go through all of that. I'm going to put you on time lapse, but I wanted to put you in close to the action, so I'm going to just go ahead and set you guys down right here, and hopefully you guys can see everything going on. Let me show you what I'm looking at. So first, as you saw, I went ahead and I took off the nut for this bolt back here. As you could see, it was really tight. So I had to use a 1/2 inch breaker bar with a pipe as an extension to break that thing loose. Once I got it loose, I used the impact, and even with the impact, I guess on these, with if they got Loctite on them, it's better to do it manually instead of with an impact, because it turns it too fast, causes it to bind up. But nonetheless, I was able to get it off. Once you get it going, if you're going to use the impact, is don't stop until that nut is all the way off. Okay, so you saw I got that off. I took off the nut on this one and the top A-frame bolt, and you saw how I knocked these off. Just use a hammer and give it a blow right here, and that'll pop that loose. That one came off pretty easy, the top one did. And then what we need to do is, I went ahead and disconnected these lines a little bit to give it some breathing room. But then there's I took off the nut here on the front of the little cap. Just stick a screwdriver in behind the cap, tap it with a screwdriver to get it moving on both sides, and then pry it out. Try not to damage the cap, because you'll have to reuse it. Then just took off this 14 millimeter nut that holds the shaft on. Pulled that off. So I wanted to make sure my axle was loose, so I pushed on it, and you can see it's loose here. Then there's 3 little 8 millimeters that hold on the hub assembly itself. So I pulled those off, and what I'm going to do now, because this thing is kind of heavy, is to go ahead and pull this hub off, pull it loose, and then let this whole knuckle kind of hang out of the way, where we can pull the axle out of the hub. So that's what we're going to try and do. Then once we get the axle out of the hub, we'll get this hub out. We'll leave it that way until we get our shock changed. To change the shock, we're going to need to take off, well, we're going to have to take off the rest of that bolt out of the way, and then we're going to have to take off these nuts up here on top. Also, just keep in mind, you want to remember how things were lined up with the shock, with the spring support here. As you can see, the SVT is to the front. The spring is setting right in its groove here. And then on top, you want to make sure before you tighten that bolt that holds the shock down onto this spring that holds the whole thing together, you want to make sure that everything is lined up, because once you put it in there and line those bolts up to get it back in there, you won't be able to set it into the groove down here if things aren't lined up the way they need to be. So let me put you guys back on time lapse, and I'll try and get the rest of this taken apart. folks, I have some bad news. It looks like the only issue was not that it was engaging on these hubs, but if you look at this, I just realized when turning this is that I've got a broken axle. So I'm gonna have to pull this half shaft out, this axle, and I'm gonna have to see if I can find a replacement before we can continue. I'll probably go ahead and change the shock out, and so I'll continue with that. But before I reassemble this side, I'm gonna have to go find an axle for this in order to get it to work. This may have been what caused all the issues, or when I was out playing with it the last time, climbing and stuff, it may have broken then, but I think it was already broken. That may have been what happened in the accident, because I was trying to figure out how they just smashed the bottom part of the frame and didn't smash a whole lot of the body. So I'm thinking that they were probably four-wheeling somewhere, and this shaft broke and the truck didn't hold itself, and it went down and smashed into a rock or boulder or something. But nonetheless, I'm gonna have to pry that half shaft out, and then I'll go ahead and change the shock while I'm at it and finish that up. And then I'll have to go run down an axle and see if I can find one for this Raptor, because these are a little different than the standard F150 axles. So we'll see if I can find one. If not, we'll have to kind of halfway put this back together until we can get an axle in. So let's get back to this shock. Okay, so we got this shock off of there, and what I meant by lining it up is this top plate here needs to be lined up so you can make a marking. What I do is I lined it up with this little gas filler here. If I run all the way up this way, up in through here, I went ahead and I cleaned off a spot right up here so that I know when I put the cap back on that it's lined up so that my shock will go right back in where it needs to go. So keep that in mind. The other thing we're gonna have to do is I pulled the nut almost all the way off to see if this spring still had tension, and it does. So I'm gonna have to use these spring compressors just to get enough slack in here to pull the rest of that cap off. So let me get that ring or those spring compressors on there and get this spring compressed so I can remove that nut off the top. And I'll get my new shock in here and get it back installed. and there you have it. New shocks installed. What I was showing you there, I don't know if you saw that, but I wanted to let you know that typically these bolts are, the dealer requires, not the dealer, the manufacturer asks that you replace that bolt. With a lot of them, they do the same thing. But really what it is that you need to put some Loctite back on there. So if you notice, I put in some blue Loctite back in there so that that thing will get tight and stay that way. And if you noticed, I used the pry bar again as well to make sure that that was tight. I also installed those back up there, got my shock all put in there. So we're ready to go. I just need to see if I can run down an axle, and then we can go ahead and put this, assemble this thing back together with the new hubs. So let me see if I can get to the store or find somebody who has an axle. Okay, so you want to make sure that you clean all of that old grease and stuff out from in here before you put that hub in there, and you got to get that really clean. This was fairly clean already. On the inside here where this shaft goes in, there's some needle bearings in there, and those will need some grease on them. Now the new kit comes with a grease pack to put on there, and so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get that greased up, and then we'll get that in there. So I got that all cleaned up. We're gonna get some grease on this. What we want to do is we want to get some of this grease on the on these gears here. We want to get some grease on the gear here and all of this stuff in here, because we want this to be able to go in and out like this. Okay, we even want to put some grease on this seal here to make sure that it doesn't burn the seal when we get that in there. I don't know if the grease they supply is enough. I may have to use some of my wheel bearing grease to put on there, but we'll try it with this grease that they supplied first. Now on this nut here, you can go ahead and tighten that up till it gets close to the till the end, but don't torque it down yet, because if you torque that down, it's only supposed to be it's only supposed to be 25 foot-pounds, and if you tighten it too tight, it'll burn out your wheel bearings. So I usually just get it in there so that it gets close. It's not torqued yet. We'll torque it down later. I just want to get it close so that the shaft won't come out as I'm trying to put this back together. Once I get it together, I'll go ahead and torque them all down. I believe this one's 25. I think that one's 80 foot-pounds, and I think this one is like 100. And then of course the lug nuts on here are 150. So I'll get my torque wrench out once we get ready to torque all these things down. But let me go ahead and assemble this, and then we'll go ahead and put the torque wrench to all of these. To do now is get this tire back on and we'll be all done. Okay folks, I think that's gonna be it. Let's go test drive and see if everything works. So let's go ahead and get a little test drive in and see if everything is working the way it should. So the first thing that I want to check is I want to check and see how everything runs in two-wheel drive and see what the difference is with those brand new shocks, and see if that made any difference. And then we'll go ahead and put it in four-wheel drive and we'll see if everything is working the way it should be. So let's go for a little drive. Let's try and find us a bumpy road so that we can check this out and see. Yeah, man, I ran around all day today to try and find that axle, and I thought I was going to get by cheap at first at $130 at O'Reilly's, and that didn't work out. And then I thought I was going to get off cheap at the dealer with $230. I thought, well, it's still $100 more than aftermarket, but nonetheless it won't be too bad. Well, that was for the regular F150. With this one, when I did find it, wow, $400. So man, I had to pick that up. I picked that up in Odessa, so that's a little ways from here. It took me a while to get back home and wrap this up, but now I'm driving this thing and it feels 10 times better on these bumps. Even the stance on the truck is taller, I think. I think that it was sagging a little bit for some reason. Oh yeah, I just went over a pretty good bump there and everything went fine. Let's turn in here and see whether we can get into any trouble in this area over here. Is closed. They're doing a lot of paving in this area, in this neighborhood, so a lot of these streets are going to be closed off. I just want to find some good bumps and see if those shocks made a whole heck of a lot of difference. Heck, we might even try going up and down on the sidewalk here. Let's see. If we were to go up on the sidewalk. Oh, yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, no problem. Let's try again. Oh, no problem. Well, it looks like everything works fine in two-wheel drive. You know, the bumps are really good. Hopefully, the biggest thing that I was worried about was my tires were cupping You know, like when the suspension goes up and down as you're going down the road, or hit bumps as you travel, and it starts to wear out your tires from shocks. And so I went ahead and I put these on there, so hopefully that'll take care of that problem. Let's see if we can find a place to go off-road here. Let's see, we've got this stuff in here, and it's getting late, so well, let's try out these shocks a little bit here. Oh yeah, they work great. Now they work like they should. You can tell they're new. Let me put this in 4-wheel drive and see. Whoa, man, this thing takes off now. In 4-wheel drive, no problem. No problem here. So here's a little, looks like a retention pond. I really probably shouldn't be here. I might rile up some officers, but we'll see how good this works going up. No problem. And I don't hear that noise anymore either. There's a steep little hill right here. This thing doesn't struggle at all. I don't even have to give it any gas. It's working fine. There's a marshy area right down here in the bottom, so I don't know if I want to get muddy or not. But it looks pretty dry. We'll see. Oh yeah, easy. All right, well, seems like 4-wheel drive works fine. Well, hello, and this is the next day here, and for now, if you like the content, like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one. Thank you.